Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of On Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hens. Very pleased to be joined by an old friend, and I don't mean old chronologically, George, but local attorney George Curtis is here with us. George has been on the show a number of times over the years, and I've always tried to have you on toward the first part of the year so we can talk about new laws that have gone into effect and so forth that viewers and listeners may need to know about. But gosh, you know, with COVID, we weren't able to tape shows for a while, and so this is like the first chance I've had to get you on.
Well, thank you for inviting me. COVID has, of course, changed everything about everybody.
Yes.
Our court system as well. Normally I've had 8 to 12 jury trials a year. I've had 3 in the last year and a half.
Wow.
I had the last one before COVID semi-closed the courthouse, and the first one after. They did some criminal cases because the Constitution requires it, but our personal injury civil cases were expendable, and we weren't getting them done, but we had to learn to dance and do more mediations, more remote, and all kinds of adjustments like people have in the workplace.
Yeah, you said something that intrigued me. You said that, you know, the Constitution requires that some of these criminal cases be conducted or held or whatever. What do you mean by that? I mean, does that go back to you got to have a speedy trial and all that kind of stuff?
Exactly.
Okay.
There are deadlines. There are deadlines for how long you can keep people incarcerated, unless they waive those deadlines, and an accused has a right to demand a speedy trial, and if you don't come up with one and you're a prosecutor, you're going to be facing a motion to dismiss, and a lot of smart defense lawyers were using that and obtaining some pretty good bargains for their clients.
I bet. Well, it's always interesting and fun chatting with you about what's happening in the law, and as I think you know, the law is one of my favorite topics, right behind pets and animals, but it's right up there. In fact, I've had attorneys all my life say, Cheryl, you should have been an attorney, not a broadcaster or a reporter. You should have been an attorney. In fact, one actually said, you should take the bar exam. And I said, and do what with it?
Sure, yeah.
But he just swore. He said, you could pass it. And I said, but don't you need a law degree? He said, if you pass the bar exam, then that says something right there. And I said, well, I don't, thanks, but I'll stick with what I'm doing. But so one of the things that we want to talk about for sure, because this is so topical, Roe versus Wade. Now, we're taping this on July 7th. It was just a week or two ago that, you know, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned or reversed Roe versus Wade. And I think a lot of people, certainly a lot of people are angry, and rightfully so, and I'm one of those who are angry. But I think people are also confused because it's not completely overturned or reversed in all 50 states, correct?
Well, that's right. It was decided on somewhat narrow technical ground that this is a state issue, that this is a wrongly decided case, that this was decided under the 14th Amendment, kind of a catch-all. The 14th Amendment says that the states have the same obligations and duties to the citizens that the United States government has in the 5th Amendment. And so it's called substantive due process over that particular period of time. When we have liberal courts, they somewhat liberally interpret the statutes and the laws as to what they think everybody agrees our values are. And some of those values, as they have evolved with some people, maybe the majority of the people, include a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. Other things might be the right of people same sex to get married, adoption when you're not heterosexual, things like that have evolved with our values, including many things involving race, so that you didn't get in a trap just because of the color of your skin. Well, what we really have here is the product of Trump. Trump
Yes.
was president. I know you want to forget it, and so do I. But he was president, and he appointed successfully 3 justices who swore on oath in their hearing that Roe versus Wade was established law. Mm-hmm. And then when the issue came up after they were on the court, they had amnesia and voted the exact opposite way that they implied they would vote. So it goes back to politics. Mm-hmm. It goes back to elections make a difference.
They do.
And somebody who is elected as president has a lot of power. And when that power is involved in appointments to the Supreme Court, where the average justice stays there for 25 years, it changes the course of our country.
It does. And presidents, I truly believe that, short of declaring war or something along those lines, I think that appointing Supreme Court justices is probably one of the most important and powerful things that a U.S. president can do. And I personally think that, we need to have term limits, for these justices. I don't think that anyone should just be appointed to a forever position and you get to just stay there, take up space, and make laws that basically you disagree with, so you're going to change things. And they're stacking the deck, and that's what Trump did.
Exactly. This is a product of Trump, and it's going to affect many, many other decisions. Already, some of the justices are implying that they should revisit same-sex marriage.
Oh, yeah?
And revisit a lot of these social developments that we've come to suspect. Contraceptives, the day after pill. I mean, I don't know where it would end. So basically what they're trying to do is go back to, I'm not trying to beat up on Catholics here or Catholicism, but, go back to an age where all we do is procreate. You can't stop procreation unless you are celibate, and that's about it. I mean, I think that that's going to just be way too much invasion in people's lives. If you don't want to permit abortion, then you have to allow these other things so that people have a right to choose whether or not they want to be parents or not. And who even knows if they'd be good parents? Some of these people who might otherwise be getting an abortion, they might be horrible parents. So I want to go back to SCOTUS because the Supreme Court of the United States, I think, besides the term limits, we have a law in this land where our courts are supposed to be open to people. And that's one of the reasons I appreciate court TV, because I can see what's happening in courts all over this country. But the U.S. Supreme Court operates in secrecy, really. I mean, yes, we hear about it afterwards. But I think since they are making such important decisions that affect every one of our lives to one degree or another, I think that they should have cameras in there. Why don't they, George? Why are they not allowed? Politics. Same reason why we don't have term limits. I think that I agree with you. We should have term limits on every public office.
Absolutely.
But certainly we have had a history of people who've been on the Supreme Court for 25, 30 years no longer functioning. But they were there and they were a reliable vote, and the Congress, for political reasons, wouldn't be in a position to replace them with somebody on the same side, and so they keep pretending that Fred's alive and has a mind.
Oh my God, that's so true though. It really is. But yeah, we should have term limits. And that goes whether you are a conservative who's been put on there by a Republican, probably president, or vice versa, a liberal who puts someone on there to support their causes. I
Well,
don't
are you
think.
implying that neither political party has any real principle? Because I know what their principle is, to get elected and stay there as long as possible.
I think that some are principled. I don't think that they all are principled on either side of the aisle. But I also think that, we need to establish some kind of law so that the deck cannot be stacked the way it has been. And I'm not saying that just because that's what Trump did. I don't think that a Democrat should be allowed to do that either. And, I think that the justices should be there. Any elected official, I've always said this, should be there to do what is best for the majority of the people that they serve. And if you do that, I don't think you can go wrong. Someone may not agree with you, but if you're thinking about who you serve instead of your own political beliefs and theologies or whatever, then I think you're okay if you set aside your beliefs.
Well, of course, and if you can stay there longer, you collect more money from people who expect favors, and that finances the next round, and you can stay there longer yet, and it's absolute power, the kind that corrupts.
Corrupts.
Exactly.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. One of the best slogans that has ever been put forth.
Well, what do you feel about the Citizens United case? I think that's worse than Roe.
Thanks for bringing that up. I don't know what that is. What, Citizens United?
Yes, Citizens United is a decision that came up, I'd say, 15 years ago, and I'm going to be 2 years off, which was a decision by a conservative Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, that decided that unlimited secret money from any source or sources, corporate, within this country or outside the country, is free speech.
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
All right, and so what we have is secret money deciding elections. The most recent example that I have is the last election for somebody for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. We had two candidates who probably both very qualified. One was a female candidate who was the head judge of that particular district out of Waukesha, and the other one was a former Walker lawyer who was an underling with less experience. And up until 4 or 5 days before the election, we had over 500 other judges and sheriffs backing the lady, and it looked like she was going in. Within the last 3 days before the election, more than $3 million in secret money was put on the airwaves and in the newspapers, just slamming this lady, and she lost in a narrow decision. Actually, the judge who was elected, I think, is doing a pretty good job. He's kind of a swingman. But I'm not saying he's corrupt, because I don't think he is.
Right.
But the simple fact is, secret money bought the election.
And that happens all the time. And, it's interesting that when I make a donation to someone, and I just did this recently, it wasn't a big donation, it was $25, but I made a donation for Lori Palmieri to run against, well, not against, she's running against someone, but she's running to fill the seat that Gordon Hintz is vacating. When you make a donation, a private donation as a citizen, you've got to give, in some cases, what your work, what position you are, like what you do for a living and that kind of thing. And they want to know certain things. But yet companies can funnel all this money in, like you said, and they don't have to do anything. That goes right back to campaign finance laws. We could solve a lot of these problems in this country if people would just stop thinking about the party that they represent and think about the people that they represent, not the party, the people, and start changing some of these things. Tax reform, the tax codes have to be reformed. Campaign finance has to be done. All these things have to be changed, I believe, and then maybe we can have some elections that, now I don't want to hear from people about saying, oh, now you're copying Trump. But I do think that elections, they can't necessarily be rigged, but I do think, and you just said it, that they can be bought by all this secret money that's coming in. So let's change it.
Oh, I agree. And McCain, Feingold, who were two great senators, one from each party, had an excellent plan to make elections honest. And it wasn't just one party that didn't want them to be honest. Traditionally, we've been buying politicians ever since we've had the beginning of this country. And campaign financing is a major, major area of corruption. Money really, the American flag, the stars and stripes, should be replaced with a big dollar bill because that's really the fuel of this country.
Yeah.
And you don't like that, I don't like that. But corporate money, dark money, really runs the country. The only two things that the citizens have left is the right to be in the jury box, or the right to vote. And there's a big effort afoot right now to take away both.
What do you mean?
Well, let's take the jury box. The percentage of cases where people are eligible to have a jury case and have 12 honest people decide, and I've never seen a situation where you can take 12 strangers and throw them in a room and corrupt them. I've never seen it happen. Well, right now, there's so much, first of all, the contract on your watch, on your car, on your glasses, on your refrigerator, all say if they go south, you look at it, you don't have a right to a jury trial, you have agreed to arbitration.
Arbitration, yep,
and
that's
then
right.
you call and say, well, I want my arbitration. Where are the arbitrators? Oh, they're right here. There's Sally and Edna, and where the hell's Clyde? You can have your arbitration right here.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. We have not 1% of the jury trials we had 100 years ago. That right is discouraged and taken away, and it takes a step further in the legislature. Now they got forced arbitrations, mediations, focus groups, and all of that sort of thing. So the right of the citizen to actually take his or her case to a jury has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Now, to make it even tougher, let's say you have an injury case. Part of the racket is coming from the medical people. They have decided that now they have, in this state, it's the alt case that they finance. So in the alt case, the Wisconsin Supreme Court says doctors don't have to testify. They can just say, no, thank you.
Yep.
And they work for corporations that get tons of money from insurance companies, so they're told to say no, thank you.
And the employees cannot be forced to testify.
Exactly. None of them can be forced to testify. So that means on your typical small case where you used to have your family doctor who's known you for years come in and testify, you broke your left wrist and it's going to ache and keep you awake some nights and raise hell with your tennis game. Those people aren't showing anymore.
Yeah.
There is a cottage industry that I call Hertz Rent-A-Witness. These are doctors that have credentials, and they make big money.
You bet they do. Hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars being professional expert witnesses.
They're Hertz Rent an Actor.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the money thing. So can the average person who's rear-ended, gets a whiplash, misses some work, their Detroit Wonder is wrecked, normally a $20,000 case, can they afford to lay out $5-6 grand cash in advance to hire Dr. Wayward Hoare, the actor, to come and say they're hurt? So this is what's happened to
Yeah.
our justice system. Again, it's been sold out to big money.
Yeah. Oh, God. See, it frustrates me, it angers me, and there's such a wide area of things we could talk about. Thinking about Roe versus Wade, and I don't want to think about it, but we have to live with what we have. So, is it that each state can decide for themselves what they want to do? Or is it just certain states that have something in place already? And I don't know how all this stuff works. I'm not that up on, Roe versus Wade. But
Okay, well, I haven't read the decision. My understanding from the comments I've read about the decision is they decided that the Constitution is silent about the issue of abortion. And Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided back 40 years ago or whatever it was. And so they're kicking it back to the individual states. And it's a state issue, not a federal issue. And that would mean that the law is substantially different in all 50 states. There are going to be some states that are going to become abortion factories.
Minnesota's already gearing up.
Yeah, a little bit like Nevada has done
With prostitution.
With prostitution, there are some smart people right now in some of these states saying, "Hey, this can save our economy."
Well, so if it's up to the individual states, George, what does our state say about this? Because I read something, you probably read it too, in the newspaper the other day, that the very day of, or I think it was the day after this decision was made, Planned Parenthood was calling and canceling dozens of appointments that they had for abortions.
Well, you see, we have always had a very strict anti-abortion, making it, I believe, a felony, law in the state of Wisconsin. Roe versus Wade overruled that. Now that Roe versus Wade is dead, we're back to a 150-year-old law.
So what people have to do then is, I guess, play it safe and take something the day before, the day after, or if you get pregnant, go to another state that is a little bit more forgiving when it comes to this.
No question, our personal lives are impacted terribly, and it's high risk. We don't know what's going to be enforced. Some of the attorneys have said they're not going to enforce it. Others have said, public attorneys have said they are going to enforce it. We don't know how it's going to come out, but it certainly is an invasion of the privacy of individuals' bedrooms. It's an invasion of the safety of people who are going to be running some risks. It's a life-changing thing, and it'll come up in the legislature, and it's going to be the biggest issue in the next election.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That and probably some of the gun laws. Because I personally think we still have a ways to go with getting rid of some of these guns, getting rid of some of these loopholes. And, isn't it interesting that it took something happening in Texas as it did, and then you've got an actor who hails from that city coming forward and speaking, at the White House about this. It kind of harkens back to when AIDS first came about. President Reagan was in office, and he just sort of looked the other way. There's no problem here. Until Rock Hudson got AIDS and ended up dying from it, a fellow actor. And all of a sudden, you saw research being done on AIDS. You saw money being funneled into research and that kind of thing. And I think we should have had some gun reform a long time ago. But it's better late than never, I guess, but we still have a ways to go yet. I don't see why people need to have AR whatever, If you need that for hunting, you should not be hunting because you're probably a terrible shot. If you need that to defend yourself, your home and your property and your family, you probably don't need it because you probably still couldn't hit the person. It's just we need to do more.
Well, it's not about guns. It's about money again.
Yeah.
And the Republican Party has taken the position that the Second Amendment says what it doesn't, and have got all the support from the gun lovers who really haven't read the Constitution. In fact, the whole decision was a farce. For 200 years, we believed, scholars believed, and the courts believed that this language, a well-ordered militia being essential, people should not be deprived of their guns. And historically, it goes back to a militia. Mm-hmm. We got rid of the British because we formed a militia with our muskets. It was about defending our homes, but some very foxy lawyers, and there are some, put together this Heller case because they had the right case in the right jurisdiction with the right judges and got the decision made that it wasn't a public right, like most people who read the Constitution think it was for 200 years. It became a private right. And then it became a religious thing. And now it's a fanatical religious thing.
Yeah.
And now you've got to have one of those AR-15s that can burp out 90 rounds in a matter of seconds. Mm-hmm. And of course, you're right. The only possible function of that is to kill people. You don't need more than 1 or 2 bullets to kill Bambi.
Yeah.
And but there's so much money behind it. There's the money in the gun industry. There's the money in the NRA. And all of the other sporting groups that are getting together on it, and so it's become a big fight. And if there's a way to stop the money, it's the answer to most of these questions.
Clearly, the NRA is too powerful. You called that the Heller case? How do you spell that?
Heller.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to look that up. It's interesting because when I took the class, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 hours, but when I took the class a number of years ago to get my concealed carry permit, the guy teaching the class said, he said, I could strap on a gun and just have it on my hip and walk down the street, walk into a bank, walk into a grocery store, and really nobody could do anything about it because it's not concealed. But, we have concealed carry in this state. Some of the other states share reciprocity with us, some don't. I mean, you still don't know if you can, I don't know if I'm traveling, if I'm driving somewhere and I want to take a gun with me, I might be in one state where it's fine and another state doesn't have reciprocity with us, and there we go,
And don't go in the airport.
Yeah, for sure. I was just reading somewhere the other day, too. I'm trying to think where I read that. But they were saying that police, when they stop you now, you do not have to declare that you have a weapon either on your person or in your vehicle. I wish I could remember where I read that. Do you know anything about that?
No, I'm unaware of that, but the cases keep coming up where police who have a very dangerous life and they never know who's got what because we're so overarmed.
Yeah.
And they want to go home to mama too, and so they're a little trigger happy. They're nervous. They are in a dangerous game and often under stress, and so they make a mistake. But the mistake is that somebody else gets killed instead of me. That's my choice. My advice to people is when a cop stops you, you put your hands right up on the windshield and say, I am not armed. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you never know how bad a night that cop had burping his new son, going without sleep.
Yeah. I did see one thing where it was, I think a lot of these, shootings are justified, where the cops are shooting people. But certainly there's so many that aren't. But there was one that I saw, and they did it in real time, well, in regular motion, but then they also shot it in, they slowed it way down so you could see it in slow motion. And when you think about it, these officers only have milliseconds in which to make a decision. And, I know that they're taught to shoot for center. They don't shoot to just hit your arm so you can't hit them with a gun or a knife or anything like that. They shoot for the center, and that means to kill, because they're not going to take any chances. But there was this, I don't know how this cop saw this going down the highway, but he saw this white pickup truck, and neither the passenger or the driver had their seatbelts on. That was his contention. And he turned around and he followed them, and they went into a little subdivision area, presumably where one of them lived or they were going to visit or whatever. And he was very nice to them. He was very sweet, and you could hear everything he was saying. And he said that he smelt marijuana. He asked them to please step out of the car. And just that fast, the driver reached over, tried to grab a gun. This cop ran to the back of the car, pulled his weapon, and this kid got out of the car, and you could see very plainly he had a weapon. And just like that, the cop shot him, and he dropped over in the street, and there he died. And his family was just up in arms. He wouldn't carry a gun. He wouldn't do that. Well, look at the tape. Look at the video. It doesn't lie. You can see a weapon in his hands.
Well, we have too many guns.
Oh, yeah.
We're the most over-gunned nation in the world. Mm-hmm. We have more gun deaths than the rest of the world combined. And people are carrying guns for hostile, irrational, antisocial excuses to pretend they're men or women or something. I mean, one of the problems with gun reform is how are we going to get rid of the guns we already have?
Yeah.
We have more guns in this country than the rest of the world combined, multiplied by 10. So let's pass a law tonight. It's not going to change that.
Yeah, I don't know how we go about getting the guns, but I'm glad to see that they finally took a step. It's long overdue. It's a step in the right direction. I don't know what really made the difference this time, but I'm glad that they did something.
Well, I think that, it's politics. I think the Republican Party that has just been no, we don't give an inch in lockstep has gotten enough bad press with their forced wedding to the gunning groups that they've had to look reasonable with elections coming up. It's about getting elected.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound anti-Republican. I've had a split ticket every time I voted, but the Republicans have brought in a lot of money from sportsmen, ammunition companies, NRA, and that whole group. And so it's been beneficial because you need money to win elections.
Yeah, you sure do. It's interesting because, like you said, George, we've got all these guns out there already. We have to start closing some of these loopholes, especially as they relate to like gun shows and this kind of thing. But there's another element to all of this, and that's the guns that you can make yourself. And I have a cousin. He does not live in this state, but he's totally sane, but he likes his guns. And you have to go through a process to prove that you're okay mentally. But he buys parts and he makes his own
These
guns.
ghost guns, sure. I know people who do it.
Yep.
There are lots of them floating around, and they're really untraceable. And that's the whole
That's
idea
a problem,
of it.
I
But
think,
if you're
though.
law-abiding, why would you want an untraceable gun? Because if somebody steals it, how the hell are you going to prove that it was your gun.
Well, I guess I hadn't thought about that point, but that is true. But, and he's very careful, with his guns and when he goes out, target practicing and things like that. But then you've got the element where you can make the guns basically from scratch.
Sure.
If you have access to one of these $40,000 or $50,000 printers, you can make them on a printer.
Sure.
And that needs to change too. I mean, I don't understand how we ever got to this point where that stuff is even allowed. How did we ever get there, George?
Boy, that's the
million-dollar
best question of the evening, because I don't know. The romance of our country was, of course, that we were adventurers, pioneers. We of course came here taking the land away from those bad Indian people who threatened us with spears, and we shot them with guns. Then we were the cowboys, the Indians, the slaughtering the buffalo. We've been gunnies since the beginning of our history, and there's much evidence that some of the impetus for the Second Amendment was concern in the South by slave owners, because a typical plantation owner might be him and his wife and maybe 2 kids, but if they got 80 slaves, they wanted to make sure that they had guns.
Yeah, that they could control them, yeah.
The great equalizer. So
yeah.
Guns have been a part of our culture more than any other place in the world.
Yeah. I want to go back to no cameras being allowed in the Supreme Court, dealings when they talk and so forth. I don't think we'll ever see it, not in our lifetime, that, cameras are allowed in there. But I do think that they should be. But I'm also a person who thinks that when the state legislature down in Madison goes into caucus, that, we can see things there. We should be able to see what's going on. And why are our politicians, again, allowed to operate in secrecy? That kind of stuff just frustrates me. So, I don't know.
Open government. We need open government. There's no question about it. We need amateur officers. We need term limits so nobody gets in there long enough to know how to print money.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the January 6th insurrection. There's been so much that's been coming out in the hearings and so forth. Do you think that Donald Trump will ever see an hour of prison time?
No.
I agree with that. I don't think he will. These legal eagles that you hear on TV, the pundits and everything, they seem to think, that a lot of them do anyway, that he's going to get, he's going to get indicted, and he's going to end up going to prison. And I just don't think that, even though I think he should, I don't think
he may well get indicted. But the legal process, all of the time it takes, sometimes 2 or 3 years, to get somebody to trial who doesn't have the wherewithal to play the game at every step of the way. I think that it's quite unlikely. And then, of course, what makes it more unlikely is that 10 years from now, who's Trump? We will have had new issues, new crises. People are sick of it, and he can cut a deal. And frankly, while I believe that he's a criminal, and I've believed that for a long time, and I believe he's dangerous, and I believe he's guilty of high crimes in what he did even before the election and
yeah.
having his people pass U.S. secrets to the Russians in exchange to get information on Biden's son and all. I think he's as crooked as any human being can be. But the real question is, would it be good for this country 5 years from now to have a 6-month trial about a fallen crook when we're going to have real problems to focus in terms of making our country better? So just because I agree with you that he's probably a criminal does not necessarily follow that it's good for the country to have that kind of a trial, because we've seen the kind of goofballs that take things into their own hands. I mean, they're next door to idiots, and they're really, while Trump was in, they came out of the woodwork, thousands of hate groups with goofy uniforms and marching and things like that. Do we need to throw fuel on those nutzos?
I don't think we need to throw fuel on it, but don't you think, and you said high crimes, and I've heard people on TV say high crimes, don't you think he deserves to be punished just as anyone else would? You, me, anyone on my crew, my friends, my family, if just ordinary citizens, Jane and John Doe, committed high crimes, we would be tried, prosecuted, and locked up.
Oh, there's no question about that.
And so don't you think that he should pay for, I mean, he has done so much crap to this country.
That's a moral question. And
well, but it's also a legal one.
Well, in a sense it is. It's probably beyond my pay grade.
I'll give you a pass.
You know, we've got too many people locked up now.
Yeah, but we could create a special place for the Donald.
I guess that if it's necessary to teach the country a lesson for Trump to have a trial, I'm for that. But I'm not for making this country paralyzed, captive, because of Donald Trump. We have got real challenges in this world.
We've got a lot of them.
A lot of them are more important than Donald Trump or Dick Nixon.
That is true. That is true. What about Rudy Giuliani? And I'm just going to bring up about this most recent thing, where he was campaigning with his son. Was it last weekend or the weekend before that? And someone came up to him and, patted him on the back and said, hey, something or other. I can't remember what they said. But, he claims that he was hit so hard that he fell forward a couple steps. Then the next time someone talked to him or he got in front of a camera and a microphone, he said that he was hit so hard that even the woman next to him, it reverberated to her. And I thought, you are such a lying pack of crap, because we all saw the video. He was barely touched. That would be like if I came up and patted you on the back and said, how you doing, George? I know he didn't say, how you doing, Rudy, but it doesn't matter what he said.
Well, he's a loose cannon. He's inhaling his own gas. Even on the 6th, he was saying, let's go up and have hand-to-hand comment, be gladiators. I mean, he's out of touch.
Yeah, well, he is, and I think so is the man that he used to work for. Want to talk about some animals. We've got maybe about 10, 11 minutes left. There are so many exotic pets that people have. Now, I just read this afternoon. There was an alligator, not a huge 18 or 20-foot alligator, but there was an alligator found in Long Lake, it covers 2 counties. One is Fond du Lac County, and then there's a neighboring county that it covers. And this alligator was found in there. Well, they're waiting, I think it said a week, to see if the owner comes forward. You know, we've got to have some laws written that limit, I think, what people can have as pets. You know, we don't need to be having alligators. We hear from time to time about kangaroos running around. We just had one, a year or so ago, jumping around down in Fond du Lac County again. I don't know what in the world they're doing in Fond du Lac County, but they seem to have some of this stuff down there. And, you know, I think about it from not only a safety standpoint for people, but also for the animal. It's not right or fair to the animal to try and keep something that should be and is accustomed to perhaps living in the wild, and you're trying to keep it in your backyard or your swimming pool or, you know, wherever. You know, what can we do to strengthen or create some laws that give these animals, these exotic animals, more protections?
Well, that's a big problem, but we've made it a bigger problem. You know, we've imported carp, sparrows, and so many things that have really screwed up our waterways, screwed up our air, extinguished our native species. Then we brought along some invasive plants, so the invasive critters would have something invasive to eat. You know, we have been so careless with the concept that we have unlimited space here, but people are always attracted by something that's different. It gives them a little attention, I think, and they can show off to their uncle or their neighbor or that sort of thing. But yes, besides the cruelty involved in captive animals, which really troubles me. I even have trouble going to a zoo with my grandkids.
I know.
Putting animals in these strange places out of their element is cruel, and it's sick, and yes, it needs repair. Do I know exactly how to repair it? I don't know, because these owners have property rights. Yeah. Now, you can do some of it with zoning, and you can do some of it with species, but it was interesting when you had indicated to me you might want to talk about animals. I dug out the state statutes, the county statutes, the local statutes, and found all kinds of junk about ducks in your backyard, chickens.
Really? Tell me about ducks in your backyard. What about that?
Well, it's a fad, as you now know, and that they don't allow males, but you can have a certain number of female chickens, but there are rules as to what kind of a cage, and it has to be protected at night, or you can do it with ducks, or you can do it with bees, and it was strange reading. I wasn't drinking, and but I thought I could use them.
I just want to say this real quick. You talk about chickens. You know, here in the city of Oshkosh, we can raise chickens if we want to, within certain rights. I mean, they have to be set back so far from a neighboring property, and they have to be, you know, live in houses that are just the right height and provide warmth and that kind of thing. I subscribe to, what is it called that the city has? See, Click, and Fix, or something like that. And it's a way of reporting things that you see, whether it's a pothole or a tree that's come down or whatever. Well, this afternoon, as I'm sitting there doing some things on my computer, I get this email come across, and somebody reported one of my neighbors, maybe 7 or 8 houses down from me. It said they are raising chickens without a permit, and they have roosters. So my guess, I drove down the street one day and I saw what I thought looked like chicken coops, but I don't care enough to see if someone has a permit or not. But somebody now, if they have roosters also, somebody's probably getting mad down there at the other end of the street because these roosters are probably waking them up in the morning. So, yeah, we can have certain things, but they can't, impact someone else's life like that. So who knows how that's going to turn out. But, these exotic pets, I found out that in this state, people can bring in kangaroos if they want to.
Oh, yeah.
And there are places in the South, because I read another story, this was maybe a year ago, where there was a cobra, a monocled cobra on the loose somewhere down in the South. I think it was in Texas somewhere. It's not illegal to have them down there. Why do you need a cobra? I mean, whoever created that rule that said that it's okay to have this, they are out of their minds.
Well, I agree, and I have been involved in some cases years ago in the area of captive cats. And I gave the case to somebody else who promptly lost it, and I probably lost a client because of it, because I was so troubled about the fact that at that time, now we're talking 30 years ago, you could have a lion or a tiger and have them in a cage.
Or a bear.
Yeah, right. You could have them in a cage where they 4 steps and they had to turn the corner, 4 steps and they had, and that's all they did is go round and round and round.
Well, do you remember here at the Menominee Park Zoo years and years ago when I was a kid growing up, that poor bear that was chained, or I don't know if he was chained. I think he was, but I'm not sure. But he had a swing, a rubber tire for a swing, and that was about it. And, when you're a kid, you think, oh, that's kind of neat to be able to see something like that. But when you think about the danger that it's doing to those animals, I like certain zoos if they're done well and they're done right. Cheyenne Mountain Zoo on the side of Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado Springs, that is a marvelous zoo. And, it really gives these animals the freedom to be in their own kind of environment. The San Diego Zoo, certainly, and there is I'm just spacing it out. It's in Tucson. It's the Sonoran Desert Museum, and it's truly in the desert. And so animals, some of them, can come and go as they please, birds of prey and so forth. But I don't like what we've done to the Menominee Park Zoo. It's just wrong to have all that stockade fencing up and those poor animals. And look at a number of years ago when a part-time employee left that gate open and a little boy wandered in there and got bit by one of the wolves. It's the animal who paid. That wolf was euthanized, and they sent it off to have its head tested for rabies. And, it's the animal that always pays, and it's not right.
Well, there's a lot of thought that needs to be applied to animal rights, to puppy mills, to indiscriminate breeding. Now you breed anything to a doodle, and
I know it.
And it's worth $1,500.
And it drives me crazy because it's a mutt. Not that there's anything wrong with mutts, but this is a mixed breed
It's
dog.
an intentional mutt. We've spent 200 years trying to make labs do what labs do, retrievers do what they do, beagles what they do, and now we breed them all to doodles. And they get double what we normally would get by erasing 200 years of scientific breeding.
I know.
And all it proves is that people and their money are soon parted.
Yes.
I mean, it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid.
Yeah. I know when I come across people like that, I'm like, that this is just a mixed breed.
Sure.
It's no different than my mixed breed dogs, but it is interesting, and and they're paying through the nose for these dogs.
Absolutely big money.
I
And a couple of my
understand it.
kids have done it, and they should know better. Too late for me to bother with DNA, but
and you talk about indiscriminate breeding, and there's, as far as I'm concerned, and I, as I think I do a lot of volunteering with animal rescue groups, animal welfare groups, that kind of thing. And I think that there are 3 breeds of breeders for lack of a better word. There's breeds of breeders. The one is the one you want to have because you don't want any lines of anything going extinct. So those would be the professional breeders who do it right, who they want to know who's getting one of their dogs. And they check you out, and if you can't keep that animal, you have to return it to them. There's a contract that you signed. Those are professional breeders who are doing it right, and they care about what they're doing and the animals that they're producing. Then you've got the indiscriminate breeders, or what I call the backyard breeders or hobby breeders. They want their kids to see the miracle of birth. Well, go on the internet. You can see anything you want on the internet these days, you know. Or they just want to have one or two litters, and then they'll sell them, and that'll be great. And I had one sometimes say, well, I'm finding homes for all these. Well, what you're doing is you're taking homes away from animals that are already here.
Sure.
So think about that. And, and then you've got the puppy mill breeders who should just be outlawed, pure and simple. And I do just, on this point, I do just want to say one thing to viewers or listeners, because I see this a lot. If you cannot keep a pet for some reason, please do not go on Craigslist or any other kind of publication or place and say free to a good home. Charge something for it, like $25, $35, something, because people can act like they are giving it a good home, like they're going to be the best owners in the world. And before you know it, that animal will be used for horrible experiments in laboratories, or it'll be used for fighting with dog fights. And so please do not ever do free to a good home. That's my speech about that.
Well, it's a good one. We have a duty to every living thing and to our planet, which may not be living much longer if we don't start to be more careful.
Yeah, absolutely. We are down to about a minute and a half yet, George. I just want to, what do you think as far as, some laws about animal abuse make that abuse a felony? We've got a woman, I think, up in Alligator County or Green Bay, I think, where, she killed some dogs at a playground or some weird thing. I don't know. She should be sent away for the rest of her life probably. But it's probably good that I'm not sitting in a judicial position, because I'd want to just send these people away. Put them on an island with some of these exotic breeds, and let's see if the animals will tear them apart. I know that sounds gross, but I think it's hatred for people who abuse animals in that way. I really do, or who harm them, who kill them, whatever. And you're a big proponent of animals and DNR and that kind of thing. So this has really been a good discussion. It has. I've enjoyed it.
Well,
we're down to about a minute, George.
I think that. First of all, I was raised on farms, and so we did the birthing. We did it all. We did the training. We had cows. We had cats. We had a dog who was supposed to go bring the cows in. Mm-hmm. And we lived with animals because there were wild animals around. There was always a .22 rifle in the chicken coop in case a skunk decided that it was time for chicken.
Guns back even now. I got to wrap up, George.
And
I'm
that
sorry.
Sort of thing. But
this has been a real pleasure having you here.
Oh, it's a delight to be here.
Hopefully
Thank you.
It will not take this long. Hopefully we won't have another pandemic.
I'm in the book,
Well, I know. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks always to you for joining us, and thanks to my crew, and we will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.